Knowledge is said to be power, but could it be that sometimes power is power? Welcome to Rubbing Minds. I am your guest host, Hero Daniels. It's been a very interesting week from the Anambra State's pre-election drama to the PDP power tussle. And I find this particular news quite interesting. The federal government has put up Desiani's forfeited properties up for sale. And part of those properties include a house in Banana Island worth billions of naira, 125 wedding gowns, and some number of underwears. Yeah, underwears, very expensive underwears. From dispensation to dispensation, corruption has been the biggest threat to accountability. We have a lot of uncompleted projects littered across the country because of lack of accountability. We've even seen cases where politicians would have to move from one party to another just to evade accountability. The big question is, how can we hold power accountable? Or is power too powerful? With me in the studio to discuss accountability in Nigeria is an accountability advocate, Mr. Lanre Suraj. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right, and so let's kick off with the history of where we got this wrong, all right? In 1966, the military dispensation took over the democratic dispensation on the grounds of corruption. And then every other dispensation after the military dispensation, including all the military dispensations, have been riddled with corruption. So would you say that our accountability model shifted, moving from the military dispensation to the democratic dispensation?
Well, thank you very much. I think that you have actually traced to the basic root of the corrupt practices in the system and the lack of transparency and accountability in governance. So the advent of military, as you have known, the military is not only just autocratic, it's dictatorial, and it doesn't have any form of accountability process. And that is where you would understand when it is said that, you know, somebody is untouchable or it has attained the level of possibly even a field marshal, and at that point is not accountable to it. It is not questionable. So that incursion into a democratic system eroded all the fabrics of what you can call transparency and accountability in governance. And the same thing then, it graduated to what we now have, which is not corruption anymore in Nigeria presently, is impunity. And the impunity has graduated from not just state actors, where you would have people who assume power and use the instrumentality of state to perpetuate all forms of abuses, desecrate the land, undermine the law. You now even have where the non-state actors that would constitute themselves into authorities to the extent of what you would see, what you have with some of the NURTW guys would be doing to even members of the Road Transport Association. So you can see how they harass and brutalize them on the street, and there's no consequence. You will now see where the height of it is where you will see cyber criminals, cybercrime, guys that are meant to either be arrested, prosecuted, not only living large, but also controlling the police institutions.
Okay, so I'm going to take it up from there. Yeah, so you just made mention of the cyber criminals, and I'm pretty much aware that we have at least 3 watchdogs. We've got the EFCC, we have the ICPC, we have the Code of Conduct's Bureau. So, how effective have these watchdogs been?
To the extent of their capacity and also limited power, they've been to some extent, so I can speak for EFCC very clearly and straightforward in terms of within his mandate. Unfortunately for the Code of Conduct Bureau, which is supposed to be the most potent of the institutions with the constitutional power, because of its potency and the capacity, the political elite and the politicians have perfected the act of undermining it. So that is where you will see, as it is today, everything that you have in the Pandora paper, talking about 137 Nigerians are involved in that. and properties worth about 233. Not just those who are in office now, the ones that are there before. With the effective Code of Conduct Bureau, that would not have happened, because the law is very straightforward. Either you declare, you under-declare, or you fail to declare, you forfeit the property. And then you are also barred from office for a period not more than 10 years. And you even forfeit the office that you presently occupy. So deliberately, the Code of Conduct Bureau as it is now, even though it's the oldest of all of them, does not have a structure of its own. So it is cocooned within the Federal Secretariat. And every document, confidential or otherwise, are within there in the Federal Ministry of whatever it is that it is hidden there. It is supposed to be under the office of the Secretary to the Government of Federation, but it is not independent to the extent that it doesn't even have a stricto sensu legal department. It doesn't have a prosecution department. So some of the prosecutions are done through the office of the Attorney General. The office of the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice is a political office. And is also one of those to be watched by the Code of Conduct Bureau. So if he pretends over the Code of Conduct Bureau, what do you expect to happen? So deliberately, some of these institutions are created deliberately by the political elite, not for them to function, but to give a semblance of seriousness to the citizens by governments and political elite.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the funding models, because I believe that the way certain institutions and government agencies are funded could also determine how accountable they'll be. But we'll talk about that right after the break. Stay with us.
Don't just stand there teasing me. Now it's time to show and prove.
This is Robin Minds. We're still talking about accountability in Nigeria, and joining me is Okbe Orinyowo, a development specialist. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, Larry was just telling us how, some of the watchdogs that we have, EFCC in particular, are under certain offices, and that they're not supposed to be under the supervision of those offices, because those offices are supposed to be subject to their supervision. What do you have to say about the watchdogs and how efficient our watchdogs have been?
I mean, absolutely. I was just listening to Larry. I think he spoke quite profoundly on some of the challenges as far as, legislative framework governing some of these institutions, and how effective they can possibly be if at the end of the day you have to report to one office or the other. I mean, we're quite aware of how, the issues between the Attorney General and, former EFCC and things around that, or, so these issues keep coming up, but for me, I want to take a quite profound perspective to these things, that I believe that curbing corruption, as the case may be, is, there is no country that has effectively curbed corruption from a policing perspective. The amount of resources you have to expand on trying to police, wandering. So I believe what we're dealing with is a pandemic. Corruption itself is endemic. It is very much, at the very, pedestrian, almost cannibalistic level that it's abnormal. So there's a level of, reorientation, if I would say, that is required, before we can even, because how much can EFCC do? How much can, we're talking about corruption at the very lowest level of the councillor, leading up to the presidency. So except we're going to set a unit on each level. So we need to approach it more from a very holistic angle, involve everybody, religious leaders, community leaders, kings, everybody. Even the kids that they were raising now. Someone said that the crop of people who are waiting to get into public office are probably going to be worse. So it's that system of, nobody's accountable. It's not anybody's property. You go there and eat your cake and, go part of, you'll be surprised that even your family members or your religious leaders will have a problem that you're a former governor and you're not driving, you're not living up to this standard, and you must be crazy. So it goes to show how well our orientation towards these things and the change that needs to happen.
Okay, that's a fantastic run. Just taking the cue from what you said, you'd notice that sometimes when it even rains in Lagos, the bus conductor and the bus drivers take it upon themselves to just raise the fares to astronomical value just because they can take advantage of the situation. So it really does go a long way. So how do you think we can really try as much as possible to strengthen the agencies and also push the word out there to see how we can change this narrative? Larry?
I think like he rightly submitted. I was going to get to that, but I'm happy that he's here. So I don't like it when it comes from me alone. So I'm happy that somebody is confirming what. like he said, we need an holistic, approach to some of these things, to the extent that we don't want to do the policing. The policing, like I said, is a deliberate scheme of the ruling elites, the political elites, the political leaders, because all they want is allow me to steal the money and then come and take a fraction of it. Or then I can use some of that money to protect myself by ensuring that we get the best form of lawyers around. We deploy the forms of technicalities to prevent from prosecution and recovery. And if you ask, seriously speaking, for an average prosecution that you see EFCC putting forward in court of politically exposed persons, I can assure you, nothing less than tens of millions would have gone into the investigation process. I'm not talking about just the prosecution. For them to investigate an average case, so imagine if the investigation is happening by Lagos State in, for instance, Ondo State or Ekiti State. So there must be traveling of the officers to go there. There must be intelligence gathering. There must be all those efforts that would require going to the banks. So preventing that from happening, the cost of fighting corruption and the cost of corruption, preventing it from happening is the first thing that we need to start putting forward for our politically exposed persons, our office holders, and the reorientation. I think you really didn't just want to go down. But the truth is that it is as sad as children in secondary schools get to write WAEC and GCE with the assistance of their parents, procuring teachers for them, expos for them, and all the kind of that. JAMB are passed by parents assisting their children to also circumvent when they know that they would not study. And that is why you can see that there's more. It's not that the public schools are immune, but there's more of the proliferation of the private schools, because it is very possible for parents to infiltrate the process. And that is where you find the challenge almost with what is happening presently with JAMB, because it is not like business as usual anymore. And parents and some of the children and their wards are finding it extremely difficult to pass through JAMB because of the processes of checks and balances that has been introduced. It is not totally foolproof, but you can see a process. So if we don't start from there, I mean, the worst are yet to be born is what I would say. And for us, it is not like all these people that we put there are coming from hell. The ones that were accused of corruption, and they are our fathers, they are our brothers, they are our uncles, they are our grandfathers. And they come from the same homes where we all come out from. It's something that must start from the homes. It's something that must start. Unfortunately, our religious leaders are not totally different. So you see quite a number of them even praying for them and sharing as part of the loot that are coming from the process of crime. There's no doubt about it. It's very correct. People have a minimum standard that is set for you the moment you go into office. And if you don't meet in terms of the accumulation of wealth, by hook or crook, you are denigrated as being totally irresponsible. And some of them will even act to tell you that you have actually changed us by occupying that office and not acquiring as is expected of you.
Okay, so part of the major mandates for this administration is fighting corruption. December 9th, 2019, the government launched a new financial transparency policy and web portal to provide the public with greater minimum financial reporting requirements. Just in layman terms, so that people can just monitor the process, all the over 800 government agencies that are on that portal to see the inflow and the outflow. How successful has that been? I think we just have just a couple of minutes to wrap up there.
Right. So my take is that I don't see anything transformative happening from that. I mean, it's likening to the TSA, that was introduced by the previous administration, and this administration, operationalized it. Well, has that stemmed corruption? Has that totally wiped out corruption? No, it hasn't. We have, and the other part of it, to scale it up a little bit, is the civil service. These are they have mastered I will even say right now that politicians cannot do anything, cannot steal without the backing of that sector. That public sector, they've mastered the act. They are the barracks that remain. Politicians come and go. So that's another aspect of things that we need to do. So I think that, so perhaps we should ask, what is NOA doing? What is national orientation doing? There has to be a clear, holistic, the way we are tackling COVID, because we see how it can possibly kill and wipe everybody out. If corruption is being treated like an emergency, declare a broad state of emergency. with clear punitive measures and how to go about. Of course, these things are good. One initiative here, what can technology do here and there? But we're dealing with a psychological issue, and if you don't approach it from that holistic angle of things to say, okay, this is one aspect. The technology being introduced to say, okay, let's digitize the process, let us see inflows and outflows, that's good. But it needs to be more than that for us to, achieve that result we want to see.
Okay, so the most popular way we've seen that the government has fought corruption is naming and shaming. We put up this name, put up these figures, this is what he stole, this is what she stole. Do you think that has been effective, or could we remodel the way we try to make our officers accountable, aside from naming and shaming? Because it doesn't, like, people don't have shame anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that just like you said, naming and shaming is very good. It's very important for a system where people will take seriously for the shame that is meant to be attached to the people. And I think it was important because we was at a point where people were actually leaving courts and even prisons to go and have birthday parties, to go and have wedding for their children, at the point before the naming and shaming started. And growing up, for some of us, it was so sad that even when you go to parties or you have a party in your area by somebody that is being classified as being thieves, corrupt, or kidnapper, or anything, there's no amount of money that the person will give to you that you will take, even without anybody warning you. Because you have associated that person with some level of criminality. You will even find it difficult to be associated with their children. But now you will see their children even sitting in first-class flight outside the country. So it is important that we name and shame. But unfortunately, this is not a serious government. That is the irony of it. And that was what brought me to your NOA thing. I tried to engage the NOA. And for me, going through the system, I discovered that the NOA as an agency for 2019 got its allocation for the year of 2019 in October 2019.
Wow.
So what will that orientation do? What will that agency do? And I doubt if that has changed. So, but for a serious government, many of these things about TSA, about the portal, would have been an opportunity to mobilize the people. Because the moment you start putting the information out there, information is not meant to be just put out and dumped on the people.
Yeah.
You must give them the basis for them to escalate it to the next level.
Yeah.
So when you go to the portal, you observe some shortcomings, you observe some sharp practices. Where do you report to? So you report to another agency and nothing happens. And that is where the problem lies.
Yeah,
so
we're out of time now.
Oh, unfortunately.
We're out of time. So very quickly, in 30 seconds, how can we just move from lip service to doing something that is very definitive?
So I'll take a leaf from what he said in terms of mobilizing the people, ultimately to position society. Fighting corruption has to be inclusive. Every citizen of Nigeria has to play a part.
Yeah.
The government alone are not the only ones that are going to fight corruption. For us to get to where we're going to, it has to be an inclusive system. People must see how that corruption directly affects them, results in bad roads, lack of employment. It has to be personal.
Yeah.
Until it becomes like the kind of NSAS kind of situation where at your different levels, we're all fighting to ensure that we're stemming the tide of this corruption. That is still there. Until then, I will get the kind of results we want.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you so much, Larry and Obe. Robin Mind continues after this break. Stay with us.